Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government confirms 5 new cases of novel coronavirus, issues travel ban on 13 countries with over 1,000 domestic cases of the disease. Senate passes resolution urging President Muhammadu Buhari to urgently address the nation on COVID-19 as House of Representatives wants the President to issue a directive stopping religious houses from holding open worship. The federal government orders closure of National Youth Service orientation camps across the country as Northwest state governors issue directive on closure of schools. Global cases of coronavirus rise above 200,000 as UK orders closure of all schools. Plus business, sports and news from Abuja, the FCT, and later international news from our London studios. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. We're staying with our coverage of COVID-19 here in Nigeria. And just before we continue, Lagos, just like Lagos, Ogun State, we understand, has also announced a ban on any gathering of more than 50 people. Remember, we said earlier the Lagos State government has announced a ban on a gathering of more than 50 people in agreement with religious bodies here in the state. So here's what we know so far about the coronavirus. On February 27th, 2020, the first case was confirmed here in Nigeria in an Italian citizen who works in the country. He flew into Nigeria on a commercial flight from Milan on February 25th. Now, 4 Chinese citizens were quarantined in Plateau State. They later tested positive. This all happened March 1st, 2020. 8 days later, President Muhammadu Buhari announced a presidential task force for the control of the novel coronavirus with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, as its head. On March 9th, still, a Nigerian citizen who had contact with the Italian citizen became the second case. The patient later tested negative for the disease. 1 day later, Turkish Airlines cancelled all flights to Nigeria. And on the 13th, a second case of the virus tested negative. A third case has been confirmed just yesterday in a female who returned to the country from the UK, as she was said to have self-isolated and is now also still in self-isolation at Yaba. Today, March 18th, Nigeria has confirmed 5 new cases of the novel coronavirus. One of them is a 38-year-old male who tested positive in Ekiti State. Another is an American man who died of complications from his illness. Let's get some perspective on the confirmation of the 5 new cases announced by the government. And I'm being joined at the news at 10 by Dr. Gani Ojamiu. He's a public health physician. Thank you for being here tonight. And honestly, thank you to you and all of your colleagues who are working hard to make sure people are safe in the country. This must be a really busy time for you, you know, being in the hospitals and having to answer questions all the time about, you know, the coronavirus. With the latest information we have today, 5 new cases, you think the federal government is doing its best to make sure that this is all contained?
Well, as at 45 cases today is expected, in the sense that our borders and our airspace is still open. So it is expected. Anyway, I wouldn't say the federal government is not trying, but my only worry is that we need to do more, in the sense that in other countries where this outbreak started, it started 1, 2, 3 cases. Before you know, it now become 100 and so. And our worry is the issue of community transmission. And the more we are getting more cases, the likelihood of us ending up having issue of community transmission. So I will advise, maybe all stakeholders, let us conduct risk analysis and try to do a kind of evaluation, so that I think the issue has to do with the economy and we are considering two things. But I believe that a good health system is tantamount to having is related to good economy. My suggestion is that if they can look at it, considering the fact that the first case was an Italian, and I remember we passed a traveling ban to Italy as at the time we had the first case, but it came in through Turkey. And as at that time, if we can remember, Turkey had no case. So the issue of just restricting to 13 countries may not be true enough, because somebody may fly from another country which are not part of the 13 list of countries that the country is, it kind of restricting. So I will advise that we do a total shutdown of our airspace and even our land border. Just for a while, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, I'll keep on reviewing based on what is happening, unfolding events in other countries where the outbreak is at its utmost.
But as the federal government makes, considerations, and puts all of these things into thoughts and perspectives, other countries, as you mentioned, are also taking steps, but they also have multiple cases of the coronavirus, meaning that, there's probably a way this virus has been behaving that is still not quite understood, even by developed countries. So maybe you could educate us a bit more about how this spreads, and, what we should be wary of.
Usually based on findings, it has been found that it spread more where there are public gatherings in clusters. For instance, in South Korea, it was found among church clusters where they were sharing holy water with salt and so on. So also among hospital clusters, that has been found that it's also a good opportunity for
hospitals.
Yeah, clusters where there are many people. It happened in China, happened in South Korea, and even in New York. The governor of New York spoke today. It has also been found that it spread more where there are gathering of people, clusters of people, where there are congestions.
Okay, very quickly, does it exist outside of the body? Can it survive outside of the body?
Yes.
On surfaces,
yes,
right?
Yes, it can survive. But there was a literature that talk about the time limit. It can survive on surfaces, it can survive on our hands. I can't really give you the time period, but it can survive on surfaces and even on secretions, on fingers and so on. There are timelines at which it can actually survive.
Dr. Ganiyu Jamiu, thank you again for being here tonight. You have a long day tomorrow. And greetings to your colleagues who are in the line of fire.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
For the federal government, an immediate measure to check the spread of the coronavirus is to cut short the ongoing orientation camp for members of the National Youth Service Corps around the country. The Minister of Youth and Sports, Mr. Sunday Dare, explains that the decision is part of the federal government's precautionary measures against the spread. Current orientation program commenced March 10th and was supposed to end March 30th. This comes a day after the president approved the postponement of the 2020 National Sports Festival, also as a precautionary move against the COVID-19 spread. The 2020 National Sports Festival was initially scheduled to hold in Benin City, the Edo State capital, from March 22nd through to April 1st. The UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced this evening schools in the UK will be closing for the vast majority of pupils from Friday. It will only reopen depending on how effective measures to reduce the spread of COVID-19 are. This comes as the number of people dying from the coronavirus in Italy has risen by 475 in one day to nearly 3,000. That's the biggest increase since the outbreak. More than 200,000 cases of coronavirus have been reported worldwide, with a rising death toll of more than 8,000. Meanwhile, the EU has begun implementing a travel ban for travellers outside the Schengen zone.
A day after the European Union announced it was shutting borders with the Schengen bloc, it has accused Russia of deploying coronavirus disinformation to sow panic in the West.
What is very important is also to inform the public and the people to be aware about this. Because whoever, and it's not only coming from Russia, this is not the only source of the misinformation, but whoever is spreading the disinformation is essentially playing with people's lives.
Belgium, which hosts the EU headquarters, is officially on lockdown in efforts to contain the spread. Residents think recently announced measures are good because people have to take responsibility for themselves and take precaution as much as possible. The German Chancellor is expected to urge people to adhere to social distancing measures.
What I'd like to is just order.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says his government would bring forward new measures to support workers and protect private renters from being evicted from their homes because of the coronavirus. The country is also stepping up testing to 25,000 a day.
That's why we will be bringing forward further measures to ensure that every worker receives support throughout this difficult period. Because no doubt, Mr. Speaker, we are asking, he's right to draw attention to the unprecedented nature of this crisis. We are asking the public to do quite extraordinary things. And we're asking business to shoulder quite extraordinary burdens.
In other parts of the world, Cameroon says it will close land, air and sea borders indefinitely from today to stop the spread of COVID-19. The government announced on Tuesday, with the exception of cargo planes, schools and restaurants will shut and gatherings of more than 50 people are banned.
When the News at 10 returns, crude oil prices touch 17-year lows, with Brent crude trading at $25.40 a barrel as the coronavirus pandemic continues to sap demand for crude. We'll have more in business news. Join us again.